Lynch, you tampering son of a gun. The 49ers active and aggressive on day one of free agency. Javon Hargrave and Sam Darnold in. Jimmy G, Mike McGlinchey out. We'll get to all of it on this live free agency day one edition of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And wow, I did not expect it, Croc. The 49ers came out swinging. The big first deal of the entire free agency period in 2023. It was the San Francisco 49ers signing a defensive lineman. And I guess it shouldn't be a shock to anybody if they spend money, spend draft picks on defensive linemen. And this time it was defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, who was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, but most recently with the last team the 49ers faced, the Philadelphia Eagles, even getting a sack in that game in the NFC Championship.
The one thing I take away from that is, and there are a lot of people complaining about, money, you don't have enough money to go get this and that. You can get whoever you want. You'll figure out a way to make it fit. And they got this guy here. They probably identified him as a guy they wanted to spend big money on. They got him, locked him in, and he's now a 49er.
It's pretty unbelievable. I love the fit. I did not expect it at all. We talked about it yesterday, Croc. It's like, it'd probably be a pretty slow day. Maybe the 49ers will, some of the guys will go. Expected Mike McGlinchey, more on him in a second, what the numbers look like with his new deal with the Denver Broncos. Expected Jimmy G to go. He ended up with the Las Vegas Raiders. But I didn't expect the 49ers to sign one of the biggest free agents and actually be more active in free agency this offseason than they were last offseason. And I love the fit for Javon Hargrave. He's the perfect defensive lineman that the 49ers need on the interior because he can play anywhere along the interior. He can be your nose tackle. He could be your one technique, which I think is where he's going to line up most of the time for the 49ers. He can play a three technique. He can go out even wider if you need him to. But he's stout against the run. He's built very differently than Eric Armstead. He's much more thick in the lower half. He's built more like a nose tackle. That's what he played mostly to start his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love Javon Hargrave coming out of college too. He's like South Carolina State or something. I can't remember which school he came from. Sort of a smaller school guy. He was really good in the All-Star games and started off his career, not a huge sack production, but started off his career as a pure nose tackle for the Steelers. Then got a chance to rush the passer and move around a little bit more in the Philadelphia Eagles scheme, coming off a career-high 11 sacks in 2022. And the perfect fit for the 49ers with their upfield scheme, that wide nine scheme up front, the way they want their defensive linemen to rush and get upfield because he can take up two gaps if you need him to. He can play that one technique nose tackle spot if you need him to and take on blocks, but he can also push the pocket. He can also he can put pressure on the quarterback. He can shoot gaps. He's really explosive. So he can do both of those things, and really he'll take over that role, and I think is a perfect fit for what the 49ers were hoping Javon Kinlaw was going to be able to do in 2022. But he's versatile, and he can do many roles on the 49ers defensive line. But, perfect fit. I'm blown away. I was so surprised that the 49ers were able to find enough cap space to sign Javon Kinlaw to a 4-year, $84 million contract.
I saw the tweet that the Locked On Network sent out with you and Williamson kind of poking fun and talking about his bottom. So that's one attribute that you kind of left off here when describing some of the things he does well or some of the attributes he has. You forgot the bubble butt, as they like to say, in the scouting world.
He's got the bubble. Yeah. We were asked on Peacock and Williamson. By the way, make sure you're subscribed up to Peacock and Williamson, the brand new YouTube channel as well. And we were asking a mailbag, and he covers the Steelers, so he's seen a lot of Javon Hargrave. And we were asked, who's the most caked up player in the NFL? It was a funny mailbag question. I had to ask Matt. He didn't even know what the hell caked up meant. Then I explained it to him. He said bubble. He's like, oh, Javon Hargrave. And so the 49ers now have the most caked up, maybe defensive player in the NFL, maybe the most caked up offensive player in the NFL with Deebo Samuel too, right? Like, yeah, John Lynch likes himself a bubble.
So we do have a good question here from Dylan, and he says, from a cap standpoint, how does this impact Eric Armstead after this year? Both a deal still coming. Armstead, are they able to move off of his contract? Because they did do a restructure, if I'm not mistaken. And if you restructure things, it kind of just pushes the money down. So at some point, like, he's going to get his money. It feels like, whether he's on the roster or not. So you just keep him, and he's just this really long-term tenured 49er, and you have Hargrave play next to him?
That's a hard question because we haven't really seen what the new numbers are. They've already restructured Eric Armstead's contract once. They might have done it again. I assume they had to do restructures to be able to fit this deal underneath the cap by Wednesday. And maybe we'll find out in the next couple of days before the new league year starts what the restructures were on the 49ers roster. I think one of the easy ones was Christian McCaffrey, because he was, had no guaranteed money left on his deal following the trade. So just a $12 million salary, the 49ers can convert almost that entire thing, to give him a $1 million, whatever it is, $1.1 million veteran minimum base salary, convert all the rest of that $12 million to signing bonus, and then that gets stretched over the rest of his contract. They could even add void years. So we'll see what that ends up looking like for the 49ers as far as restructures. But when you restructure a guy, that adds more guarantees, and you're less likely to be able to move on from their contracts. So without looking at it right now, I would assume Eric Armstead's contract's probably structured in a way, especially if they restructured it again, that locks him in pretty much, and they expect him to stay throughout his contract, and then they'll eat some money when they hit the void years at the end of his contract. And maybe this is a contract that's going to stay longer than Eric Armstead's when his deal is over. By the way, 4 years, $84 million. Shout out to David Lombardi who brought this up. 4 years, $84 million was the exact contract, $21 million per year that DeForest Buckner ended up signing. And doesn't this feel like the 49ers kind of undoing that deal and maybe admitting defeat on that one and needing to bring in someone like Javon Hargrave and spend more money on another defensive tackle?
Well, yeah, you got another Javon, right? Javon Kinlaw. And, how does this impact him? Does he go to being a rotation type defensive lineman? I was just looking for him to, can you just be a 2-down guy, right? Like, can we just utilize you on run stopping downs? But when you see him kind of get pushed out of there in the NFC Championship game, I don't know, I kind of have nightmares of that, where it's just, you see somebody just get dominated in that way. We used to see Buckner get moved out sometimes, Armstead not as much, but, you see them get moved a little bit, but not like what it looked like with Kinlaw. And it was just like, gosh, man, like, just be good at one thing. Right, like you're drafted 14th overall. Just you don't have to be this dominant guy. Like 9th overall pick Mike McGlinchey, who just got a huge payday. He's not the greatest well-rounded offensive tackle, but it's like, hey, I can hang my hat on this. I do this very well, blocking out in space, run blocking, and then you know what? Yeah, I might get whooped a couple times a game, pass blocking, but for the most part, I'm serviceable. Like Kinlaw is like, what are you? Like what do you hang your hat on? I think that's a bigger issue. So you make a move like this, and now it's like, yeah, you are. I mean, they're basically just kind of washing their hands with that whole thing.
That's hard to know exactly what the plan is. I assumed as soon as I saw it that they're probably trying to figure out if they can trade Javon Kinlaw, whether a team will take that on. The 49ers can't really cut Javon Kinlaw because it doesn't save him any salary cap space, but they can gain about half of that his salary in salary cap space, about $2.5 million if they do trade him. So they do save some money if they're able to trade him, but cutting him, they won't save any money even post June 1st. So maybe they can find somebody else. And we did that podcast a few weeks ago, Croc, where we talked about other players that probably weren't going to get their 5th-year options picked up. And we assume Javon Kinlaw is probably one of those players. Maybe they could swing a trade, maybe bring in another player that's a similar, I don't want to say bust, but maybe a disappointing first-round pick from that same draft in 2020 that might need a fresh start. Mekhi Becton is one of the names from the Jets that we brought up. So the two options here on the 49ers defensive line I want to get into next. So what does this mean for the 49ers defensive line? How does he plug in? Or do the 49ers maybe go back to the way they had it before when DeForest Buckner was around? Maybe Eric Armstead's the one that moves, and maybe Javon Kinlaw sticks at defensive tackle as the starter next to Javon Hargrave. So we will dive into that next. How does the defensive line look now currently after day one of free agency, the Sam Darnold signing, and we say goodbye to the Jimmy Garoppolo era as well next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's getting to the nitty-gritty of the NBA season, and now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Safe, secure, and super easy to use. I love the website. Build those parlays. You can bet on everything from the money line, point scorers, threes drained. Major League Baseball is coming up. You just got to see some live actual 2023 baseball, spring training, Cactus League action recently, and of course draft props as well. So you can still bet on the NFL, even though it is not in NFL season right now at FanDuel. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a bigger chance at a payout with same-game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So this is the question. I'll pose it to you, Croc. What do you think? Do you think this means that the 49ers line up for the first snap in 2023 with Javon Kinlaw next to Eric Armstead inside, and it's Nick Bosa on one edge and Drake Jackson on the other edge? Because that was my initial thought. Or does this mean potentially it's Javon Kinlaw, it's the Javon's inside, right? Javon Kinlaw maybe move him over to that 3-tech so he doesn't have to take on multiple blocks in that sort of nose tackle-y role, and then it's Javon Hargrave inside next to him, and then on early downs it's Eric Armstead at defensive end with Nick Bosa. Then in sub packages you filter in the rest of the guys.
I could see that being kind of their plan, right? Saying like, all right, if they want to utilize all these guys, because right now, if you think of the key things that Shanahan said Drake Jackson needs to get better at, what was it? It's like, man, strength, right? You got to get stronger. So if you got to be stronger, you're talking about base downs. I don't know if it's the guy that is kind of, lacking that strength that you want to put out there. So I'd assume maybe Eric Armstead goes back out. And we explained it yesterday. And for those of you who did not hear it, listen, 49ers run a lot of quarters defense. Quarters, you got too high. You got too high, that's one less guy in the box. How do you combat that? You put a bigger guy on the end. Who is that bigger guy? Typically, it was Eric Armstead. That's why he played that big end spot and then slid inside on pass rushing down. So I could see them kind of going back to that. All right, Kinlaw, look, let's get it, man. Let's get it. Let's be that guy at least early downs, play in there, and then pass rush. You get a guy who, and I'm reading this tweet right now from our guy, Karan, at 905 Karan on Twitter. He says, Javon Hargrave, over the last 2 seasons, according to PFF, 118 pressures, it's a lot over 2 seasons, 19 sacks, 62 stops, 19.3 win rate. All right, I mean, that's legit. So you know who your guy is inside on passing downs. But I think on run downs, you want to be stout, especially on the end there. So I like the second part of what you said.
I think it does start to make some sense, and maybe and I don't think there's a huge market, which we were asked in the chat here. I don't think there is a huge market for Javon Kinlaw in trade anyway. So the 49ers weren't going to get much for him. Maybe that is still one of the plans, and they're not done. That was just the first day of tampering in free agency, and so we'll see what the team ends up looking like. But I don't think they would put all of their eggs into the Drake Jackson basket just yet either. So maybe that's the plan is, we'll see if someone comes calling for Kinlaw, if they can, trade him. And as Darnold mentions here, the biggest problem with Javon Kinlaw is that he can't stay healthy and he can't get on the field. And maybe he'd be a lot more consistent if he was able to be on the field and just play more too. So that's one of the problems with Javon Kinlaw, and why, teams might not want to trade for damaged goods if they think he's, just not going to be on the field for them either. But yeah, so some interesting options for the 49ers on the defensive line for sure. And there's probably no better fit than the way the 49ers like to do things with their defensive line than Javon Kinlaw, because he can stop the run, because he is a stout player, but can still get upfield. And they don't want that 350-pound nose tackle that can't rush the passer. It's just not the type of player they want to employ. So he's actually, sort of a rich man's version of what the 49ers lost in free agency that we said they needed to replace, right? In DJ Jones, well, they've done that. They replaced
rich man's DJ Jones and rich man's Kevin Givens, who the 49ers did get to sign back. I've always liked Kevin Givens. I'm a big fan of Kevin Givens. I just think he's so good in his role. all right, in his role. And those are the guys that I feel like make the 49ers defense what it is, where it's, hey, I have a role. I'm not in there every down. I might only play 10 snaps, but in those 10 snaps, I'm going to kind of mess something up for the opposing offense in this way. And I think he does that very well. So you think of Givens and what he looks like, and then you think of Javon Hargrave, definitely a more jumbo-sized elite version of that. And it's kind of just a little similar. If you watch Kevin Givens' best play, it could look like, oh, is that Hargrave? But it's just the best play. Then those are few and far in between, though.
It's interesting. The first two moves the 49ers made in free agency this year were both defensive tackles. The big money move for Javon Hargrave, and then a modest deal for bringing back Kevin Givens, who's been a nice rotational player. Yeah, he's a bigger version, because Kevin Givens is just not that big of a guy, but he's built low to the ground and wide. He's just not 320 pounds. He's barely scraping 300 pounds, probably, just because he's not very tall either.
I still want that guy. I want that 340-pound movable object.
The 49ers don't want that guy, but this is the closest thing we were going to get, I think, Javon Hargrave. And he's a really good pass rusher on top of it. So I love the move. He's a really good player. You're never going to get worse because you got better on the defensive line.
Right.
And that's been the 49ers philosophy. And so I'm all about it. I like it. I don't know where they found the money. We'll find out about some of those restructures coming up. We mentioned Kevin Givens was re-signed. How about Tashaun Gibson re-signed to a 1-year contract just before the start of the tampering period last night? Croc. Sunday night, we saw the announcement that Tashaun Gibson was coming back to the 49ers as well on a 1-year, $2.9 million contract, which is, that's solid for a starting caliber player, which is why I was so sure that Tashaun Gibson was going to come back to the 49ers, because that's a no-brainer for how good he played. Like, he was really good for the 49ers last year, but it probably also spells the end of Jimmy Ward's career with the 49ers, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Jimmy Ward is probably out of there, and I was watching him on Instagram Live, and he had some suitors. It sounded like about 5 teams, and it didn't sound like he was going to be a day one signing. But, at some point over the next few weeks, when teams start to figure it out, because those veteran guys, their contracts are a little different. They're like guaranteed. So it's like their minimum is higher. And the safety position is kind of a position where teams can kind of like low-key plug and play. So you can kind of wait a little bit. I remember a few years ago, it was Eric Reed out there, Kenny Vaccaro. There were like a bunch, Trey Boston. There were a bunch of safeties. And everybody just thought these guys were going to fly off the boards and end up being signed. And it took weeks. I think Eric Reed didn't get signed until during the season. So sometimes the safeties are a little bit slower with the market.
Dr. Steve Brule in the chat says, Omenihu has moved out or inside on passing downs. That's Hargrave now. I think there's an opportunity for a lot of guys to do a lot of things, and we haven't talked about Omenihu yet. He's still out there as a free agent. Are the 49ers not done? We'll see. There was a report that the 49ers were looking around at edge players, which tells me maybe they were trying to look at somebody else from another team before they brought back Omenihu, or maybe Omenihu and Ebukam are still in it for the 49ers. So we'll see what happens there. And I think that would signal what they're going to do with Kinlaw, as far as being, expecting him to or trying to keep him as a starter or be a reserve or potentially traded if they do bring in another edge player that's clearly going to be the starter on base downs with Armstead inside. So that'll be a huge indicator in the next few days if the 49ers do spend some money on Charles Omenihu. But again, like as I said yesterday, I wouldn't expect them to spend a lot more money, but who knows, Croc? Maybe they've got a lot more money to spend, and they're clearly aggressive. And that's one thing with John Lynch, man. The dude's competitive, and he GMs just like he played safety in the NFL. And we saw it with, being aggressive and trading up for Trey Lance. We saw it in year one, trading for Jimmy Garoppolo mid-season. He's competitive. He wants to be good. He wants to win. He has that juices. He has those juices flowing inside of him. That's why he wanted to leave the broadcasting booth and have some skin in the game and be GM of the San Francisco 49ers. He wants to win, and we're seeing that competitiveness now with the big move for Javon Hargrave. And we saw the trade mid-season for Christian McCaffrey. Like, the 49ers are an aggressive.
Emmanuel Sanders. Why do people act like why are people so surprised, like with the Hargrave signing? I wasn't surprised in the sense that they made the move. I just didn't know where the money was going to come from, right? Like that, and I'm not a capologist, so of course I'll be surprised by that. But just in the sense of they made a splash move, there are a lot of people that are surprised by it. And I'm like, why are you surprised by anything that this regime does now? Like, they are very aggressive. They go after it. If there's a guy that they want, they go and get that guy. We've seen it time and time again, whether you like to trade up for a guy like Dante Pettis or Joe Williams or whatever, guys that didn't quite work out, or the Christian McCaffreys or the Emmanuel Sanders, guys that really helped the 49ers. They have been super aggressive. So I'm never surprised by anything, but I'm looking at social media, checking the temperature, and there were a lot of people really shocked by the signing, but not because of the money, because they went out and got a big time player. Like, bro, they do that all the time. Like they do that often.
They've done it so many times and paid so many guys. That's why I thought, I was like, well, you can't do it again, can you? And John Lynch is like, watch, bro. We're gonna do it one more time. So we'll see. And who knows? Maybe they're not done. They got a ton of draft picks. They could trade for a veteran player. There's still a ton of moves the 49ers can make. We're only in day one of tampering period here, Croc. These moves can't even be official until the new league year starts on Wednesday. But as new players enter the picture and enter the San Francisco 49ers locker room, Croc, that means you got to say goodbye to some players. And it's time to say goodbye to a couple of longtime 49ers now, in offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey and quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Built Bar. You know what it's time for? It's tourney time, Croc. It's time for the Built March Madness bracket. It is here, and we know you have a favorite flavor of Built Bar or Puff, and now is your time to make it count. And you can go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorite flavors. You know, I'm going to be voting for the peanut butter. I don't think the peanut butter gets enough credit. I think it was coconut or coconut almond last year that won the whole thing. To me, that was an upset. I was surprised by that.
Yeah,
but
coconut.
Yeah, exactly. Croc, you're gonna be on one of the puffs, right?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. Wait, was it the key lime pie puff? What was your favorite?
Very good. Key lime pie. There's key lime pie, and then there's one other one. I love the puffs, y'all. So listen, if you're like me, I don't want the bar. The bar is good. Built Bar has a really good bar. But that puff, there's just something about it. I love marshmallow, so when I bite into it, it's soft. I'm missing teeth, so it's not hard on my teeth. I'm missing teeth in the back. I remember my guy, Sheldon Richardson, was like, Croc, why do you eat like an old man? Dude, I'm missing teeth, so I need the puffs. All right, they help me, and I'm a big fan of those. So any puffs, but definitely the key lime pie. Terrific.
I'm a little under the weather, Croc. You're making me cough. It'll do that. Yeah, so Croc likes the puffs. I like the traditional bars. You can vote for your favorite flavor, whether it's a seasonal flavor. We'll see what the bracket looks like. And when you vote for your favorite bar, puff, you will be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built Bars. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built and have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. So you got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're so amazing. They taste great. They are good for you. Low in calorie, low in sugar, high in protein, and most Built Bars covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. So go to Built.com, get yourself a box of Built Bars, and go to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar. Man, it's over, Croc. It's really over.
I'm disappointed, Peacock. I'm disappointed with the 49er fans. The way that they've they are celebrating the departure of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't know if it's just, we're just, ready to move on, whatever it is. But the way they're talking about him, I always felt bad about how he's talked about. Listen, you can say, man, I don't know if he's quite good enough to make that play to truly get your team over the hump, right? Like you could say that, like, can I win a Super Bowl with him? You can, but he likely won't be the reason. Like you could say that. But the way that 49er fans talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, I think is extremely disappointing with how well he played for the 49ers. He was a constant pro. He played hurt, torn thumb, injury, shoulder falling off, whatever it is. Hey, I'm out there. His teammates all backed him. They loved him. all he did was go out there and he doesn't tweet. He's not on social media. He doesn't say anything. Matter of fact, he doesn't give you anything controversial with anything that he says, but yet he receives so much hate. And I'm just like, dude, like, this is a guy, when he took over, the 49ers had 0 wins on the season. And you rattle off 5 wins. I remember his first touchdown throw against the Seahawks, it ignited this, like, oh man, I think we got our quarterback, right? And I know there were ups and downs with the injuries and whatnot, but man, when he was on the field, he was a good quarterback. Is he great? Are you ever going to compare him to the Mahomes and the Josh Allens and even, Jalen Hurts? Like, no. But Jimmy was a good quarterback. And the way 49er fans are talking about him is like, and they're like, oh yeah, peace, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I'm like, man, that's a little disrespectful for a guy who, he was a good pro for the 49ers. He was a good pro. He was a good player. I get it. But, man, it was a little weird. I was a little disappointed with the fan base today.
Yeah, somewhat disrespectful the way Jimmy Garoppolo is treated by some fans. And, his only flaw is that he was good, not great. And teams want a great quarterback. And they want they want Joe Montana. They want Steve Young. And it's difficult to find those guys. But the 49ers won a lot of games as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo showed up. And so he deserves.
When you had Jimmy at quarterback, and regardless of how, again, where he ranks or whatever, but what was your confidence level that the 49ers are going to win the game with him at quarterback? And I'm not saying he's the reason, but just the confidence level that Jimmy's in, he's at quarterback, your confidence level on the scale is 0 to 10 that you're going to win the game.
Always confident. You know what I heard from Greg Papa today? I don't know if I missed this. I don't know if you've heard this before, Croc. I didn't realize how bad it was for Jimmy Garoppolo with his injuries last year in the playoffs. He was throwing left-handed during practice during Packers week. Have you heard that? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
that's why his teammates back him the way they do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny.
That's why wherever he goes, people are making fun of Raiders for getting him. And I think it is kind of a lateral move to go from Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, it's a lateral talent move. You can argue Carr is better, but the $75 million cheaper contract too. So overall, probably a win. And they can get out of the Jimmy contract, I think, whenever they want to. He signed a similar deal that he had with the 49ers before, actually. Now that it used to be top of the market, now it's like mid-level quarterback. It's like there was no middle class for quarterbacks, 20-something million. There was really no middle class for quarterbacks. Now there is, and Jimmy Garoppolo has just parked himself there. He's like the first ever middle class quarterback. Because everything's like, oh, you want to get top of the market money, or you're a backup sub $10 million per year. Jimmy's like right in the middle now.
Yeah, I think when I did the math with the numbers that I saw, I think it was like $22 million a year. I was like, dang, I thought he would get like a few million more. I didn't think he'd hit $30 million a year. I thought he'd get around 25. 26, like when you look at some of the contracts that these other quarterbacks are getting and kind of what he has done. Now, I saw someone say he sucked in the playoffs. he did. I will not dispute that. All right. But, when I look at the Raiders, I feel like, man, you got Jimmy Garoppolo, you probably win 10 games, and I would not be surprised because it's just kind of what he does.
Yeah, they're not going to be worse than they were last year. And clearly, the guy that's coached him before, Josh McDaniels, liked him enough and saw enough from him that he wanted him back and wanted Carr out the door and wanted Jimmy G back. So there's something to be said there that guys who have coached him before want to coach him again and want to keep bringing him back. So Jimmy Garoppolo was a good 49er. He was absolutely a good 49er. So I'm going to miss Jimmy G, and I'm going to miss the Rita Oak artwork every day now.
Yeah.
It's finally over, and Jimmy Garoppolo, a Las Vegas Raider. By the way, the comp formula, the 49ers made a big signing, but the Jimmy Garoppolo signing cancels out the Javon Hargrave signing. So with Mike McGlinchey now, $17.5 million on a long-term contract. It was 5 years, $87.5 million contract Mike McGlinchey signed with the Denver Broncos. So that's something potentially right now that could get the 49ers another third-round comp pick next year. So Mike McGlinchey officially gone. The writing was on the wall. He said he was going to sign the first day of free agency. It's probably because he knew someone was going to throw $17.5 million per year at him like the Denver Broncos did. And I think there might have been a bidding war with the Chicago Bears as well for Mike McGlinchey's services. But he's going to Denver, so we got to say goodbye to not only Jimmy G, but Mike McGlinchey as well.
I think we mentioned it on yesterday's show, and someone actually tagged us on Twitter kind of saying that, like, where he was like, man, Croc said it, like the league is going to value McGlinchey a little bit different than 49er fans. I think the 49ers value McGlinchey a little different than 49er fans. And he was a guy, and I talked about it, if he was drafted second, third round, like, man, that was a good pick. Unfortunately, he was drafted 9th overall. And you passed on Minka and Derwin. So it's like, it's always going to be bad in my heart, because I'm like, when they open their mouth to say, with the 9th pick in the draft, the San Francisco 49ers select, I'm like, Minka, let's go. And it was like, Mike McGlinchey. And I'm like, what? And remember, at this time, they hadn't traded Trent Brown yet. So
right.
it was more surprising. And I was with you. There.
That's right. We were doing the first ever Peacock live at Yancey's Saloon in San Francisco. Shout out Dylan DeSimone. I haven't seen that guy in a long time. I don't think he's on
he got married. So congratulations to him. He got married. But I haven't seen much of it.
Yeah, we're doing live. That was the Fred Warner year as well.
Yeah.
Dante it was a fun draft party. Real quick, Croc, we got to go, but we haven't talked much about Sam Darnold. The 49ers signed a quarterback after Jimmy Garoppolo leaves via free agency. They signed a new backup quarterback, right? Sam Darnold. It's a 1-year contract. We'll talk more about the structure and what these guys made when we get the official numbers of some of these things. I've seen some of the numbers here in the chat on how some things might be structured for Hargrave. I still haven't seen a number on the 1-year contract for Sam Darnold, which is really the deciding factor on whether or not I like the deal or not. But he's a veteran quarterback that started a lot of games. The 49ers liked him and were scouting quarterbacks for the 2018 draft during that 2017 season when he was so good for USC. But they ended up trading and then signing Jimmy Garoppolo in the offseason. But they did a lot of work on those quarterbacks. So I think the 49ers have liked him since then. And there were some rumors that they were maybe interested in him when he was still a Jet at some point in 2021 as well. So Sam Darnold, 1-year contract. We don't know what the dollars are, but he does check the boxes of being a veteran that has started a lot of games, that can start some games for you, but he is kind of non-threatening to me for Trey Lance as well. So for that reason, I think he's a good fit.
Somewhat. Here's the interesting thing about Sam Darnold. He does possess a certain amount of talent, and I saw my guy Rich Madrid, so I don't want to steal his line, but he says he's a streaky quarterback, meaning
extremely.
You can watch him for a drive and see him do some really good things. Like, he can make some really good throws. He can make some plays with his legs, right? Now, if you watch him enough, then you realize why he's on his 3rd team after being drafted number 3 overall, right? So it is interesting because I just kind of envision practice and what that might look like. And you see guys like Purdy and Trey Lance, and depending, right, like you might not even see Purdy for a while. Trey Lance is going to be there. I could see a scenario where people get excited about Sam Darnold because of some of the throws that he makes. He has a good arm. He has athleticism.
Really good throw against the 49ers when he was on the Panthers.
Oh, yeah. So that's the talent, right? Like, when you look at a guy that's drafted number 3 overall and he makes a throw like that, well, it's like, of course, he's extremely talented. That's why he's drafted high. The issues with him is inconsistencies, and you have to figure out why. Was it the people around him? Was it coaching? We've heard all about Adam Gase and that situation over there in New York. It was extremely weird. Lack of talent there. Pass catchers is weird. All he needed was a 49er situation. Again, he might have these things that are just you can't fix now because you go back to his rookie year. Man, I'm seeing ghosts, right? And he could still be seeing ghosts now because of that. Right? He's just battered. He's battered. So I don't expect anything out of him. Worst case scenario or best case scenario, whatever, or maybe what they're thinking is 3rd string quarterback. And that's it. So I saw a lot of people kind of upset a little bit by this. Sam Darnold, what do you guys want? Do you guys want them to go and pay a bunch of money for a starter? They really like Brock Purdy. They still can see what they have with Trey Lance. And they did exactly what Peacock said they would do. Get a veteran, and they're probably going to draft a quarterback as well and have 3 arms going into camp. So it lines up with your timeline. And Sam Darnold possesses a certain amount of talent, super inconsistent. That's why he's not a starting quarterback. And I think it's a solid signing. It's solid.
Yeah, and there's still some potential upside there with Shanahan, with Sam Darnold. You can see it. And, he can make bigger throws and make bigger plays maybe than Garoppolo. But he's also, when Garoppolo's bad Jimmy, that's kind of average Darnold. Like, that's Darnold's problem, is all the bad stuff that Jimmy did. So fans are going to hate Darnold if he's still going to be that guy and ends up playing a lot of games. He throws a ton of picks, and then he doesn't have the consistency that Garoppolo has, where he's dropping dimes in there and making a lot of throws and making a lot of plays. He doesn't have those stretches like Garoppolo does in between his bad plays. So it really depends on how much he's paid. Is his contract structured in a way where it's, less than $5 million a year, maybe some incentives in there if he ends up starting some games, something like that, something that's non-guaranteed, where if the 49ers like a quarterback that they say draft in the 7th round, they pull another Purdy out, and they want that guy on the roster, they can just, like Nate Sudfeld last year, they can cut Sam Darnold before camp. Then it's a good deal. And you'll see what you have in Sam Darnold, maybe, reclamation project for Kyle Shanahan. But if it's, $8 to $10 million, and look, I have a feeling that's what it's going to be,
No way.
Remember what Mitch Trubisky got last year? And he was trash.
He got $3. Well,
he got like $9 million, didn't he?
But remember, the year before he got $3 million. And then
because he did the backup deal for $3 million, and then the Steelers signed him after not playing at all.
Yeah, but to be a starter.
To be a stopgap starter. Yeah, so maybe that's
not what Sam Darnold is.
Right.
Sam Darnold is like, okay, we need an arm and potentially a third quarterback. So can you be that? Now, if you can be more, awesome. If all of a sudden 49ers just strike gold, no pun intended, and Sam Darnold is amazing, and all of a sudden everything just clicks, and maybe it just took Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Kyle Shanahan, and maybe that's what it took for him to be good. Cool. But I do not think that's what they're expecting at all. I think they're just like, hey, veteran guy, come in. He has started a lot of games in the NFL. Again, we still talk about Trey Lance. He got 4 starts. Hasn't finished back-to-back games. So I think that's what this move is. We kind of know what he is, what he isn't. Can we just, hey man, you can take checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey all day if all else fails. And if he has to play, which they're probably hoping he doesn't have to play. Why? Because, hey, we really like Brock Purdy, and we want to see what we have with Trey Lance. So hopefully, Sam, you don't have to play.
Yep. So if it's that type of a deal, and
$3 million max.
Yeah, $2-3 million. Dollar amount is low. You can carry him as the third quarterback if you want. You could even cut him before the end of camp if you like, 2 other quarterbacks. Then that's a good deal. If it's more than that, then I don't know if I love it for Sam Darnold. But we'll get the structure for all the 49ers contracts. We'll know the Sam Darnold dollars, I'm sure, by tomorrow. The 49ers are active. They're aggressive. What's John Lynch going to do next? We'll find out. We haven't even hit the opening of the league year yet. So we'll be back tomorrow with a Winky Wednesday podcast and break down everything else that the 49ers are doing in a free agency. And some of the stuff, some big things I think are coming around the league as well. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Make sure you subscribed up. Make sure you tell a friend about Locked On 49ers. Subscribe to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, brand new YouTube channel there. Check out Locked On NFL Draft and everything the network has to offer. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.